What is going on, everyone? Really excited for today's video. We are going to get into my quarterback tier maker rankings heading into the 2023 NFL season. Figured with training camp picking up here was about as good of a time as ever to do this before the season started. Everybody loves a QB tier maker rankings list. Everybody loves to tear apart a tier maker list. So do let me know in the comments down below where I went right, where I went wrong. If you do enjoy the video, please do hit that like button. And let's go ahead and get started. Definitely going to have some explanation on some of the logistics of how I put this thing together as we go. Just a couple notes. I will explain each individual tier as we go instead of trying to lay them all out before we get into it. I think it's going to flow better that way. I will also add that they are ranked inside of tiers. Sometimes people like to dodge that to avoid confrontation. I'm not afraid of confrontation. Let me know if I sorted these guys in the wrong order, but do remember they are tiers for a reason. If you are trying to argue for one guy within a tier above another guy within that tier, I understand your argument, right? They're in those tiers for a reason, but this is how I would sort these guys. And then there are a couple of sub tiers. I know it gets complicated, but those are tiers within tiers. It's not even a tier A, tier B situation because it's a graphic. One has to be above the other, but we'll get into that a little bit more as we go. Yeah, let's do it. So at the bottom, I've got my capable backup tier. Not a whole lot of explaining to do there. The only guy I think that's going to be opening up some eyes is probably Hendon Hooker, who I view similar to how I viewed Desmond Ridder last year. And as we'll see, Ridder is up a tier higher now that he's kind of earned a starting job in the NFL. I think Hooker could someday become a capable starter, but I do see some limitations in his game with the pocket presence and just kind of playmaking feel about him. I think that's a big reason why he fell to the third round on top of the ACL injury. He is a 25-year-old prospect, but for now, I think he does, for what it's worth, have a high floor and is going to enter the NFL as a capable backup. The rest of those guys, not going to break him down. Let's get into this next tier or sub tier, if you will. Again, this isn't even a tier A, tier B, because there is some cross contamination, if you will, between these two. I think these guys are in the same range of rankings, but they're in this range for different reasons. So you have, for convenience sake, so that you can understand what I'm saying here, in tier B, if you will, you have the high upside developing backup. These are guys that I think in most situations should be viewed as a backup who is developing but does have a lot of physical tools and upside. So there we have Malik Willis. We have Matt Corral. Pretty self-explanatory there. I do have Zach Wilson in this tier. I do still think the tools are there. He's still young, with an opportunity to sit and observe Aaron Rodgers for a couple of years. I'm not ready to fully write off Zach Wilson. We saw what happened with a former Jets quarterback in Geno Smith with time to kind of grow himself as a professional quarterback. So, I think there is still a world where Zach Wilson can figure it out, but he should not be starting at this point in time. And then you have Sam Howell, who I viewed right there with Willis and Matt Corral coming out. I did have it in this order. I had it Howell, Corral, Willis, all with second round grades. And it shouldn't be a surprise that I was super surprised that Howell fell to the fifth round. I felt like even at the very back end of the first round, I wouldn't have really, questioned it for a lot of teams because I just think the upside is there. Definitely thought second round was a much more comfortable spot for him, but for him to fall to the fifth round was just inexplicable by the NFL. No one really wanted to pull the trigger on kind of opening up this window for a guy that is expected to probably get an opportunity at some point. If that makes sense, I think teams just didn't really want to invite that pressure into the building, I suppose. But Washington eventually did in the fifth round. The tools are there. He fell primarily because the team around him fell apart in his final year, and his evaluation was kind of left incomplete because all he did was run RPOs and read options for the most part. So it's really just about the mental processing and, the mental side of the quarterback position for him. If it comes along, there's tools there for him to be a quality starter. But he's not even, in my opinion, guaranteed to be their starting quarterback. I have Jacoby Brissett within this sub tier in our next kind of grouping here in tier A, if you will. of veteran, lower upside, fringe starting quarterbacks. I just mentioned Jacoby Brissett does come in at the top of this tier with the 31st ranking in the NFL. Sam Howell gets the 36th ranking, so not an ideal situation there for Washington. But let's just talk about Jacoby now. I really liked what he did in Cleveland last year, played better than Deshaun Watson did, and kept that Browns team very competitive. So I do think he's one of the 32 best quarterbacks in the NFL. I think because of the upside, they will go to Sam Howell, but if he really struggles at some point, whether that's in preseason or as the season starts, with Ron Rivera's job kind of in question, wouldn't be surprised if they turn to Jacoby Brissett there at some point. So there's your Washington quarterback room, I guess. But at the bottom of this kind of veteran, low upside / fringe starter tier, I do have Jameis Winston in this tier. It's tough because 2 of his 3 games, he's probably not playing like a starting caliber quarterback, but the other third, he's like a great quarterback. So if you average those out throughout the course of the season, I think this is what you get as a fringe starter. You will also note that I only put number rankings on the top 36 players, stopping at Sam Howell. One last little note there, I wanted to make sure all of the guys slated to start did have rankings on them, just to contextualize that a little bit. And then I have Sam Darnold. I am interested to see what he does in San Francisco, man. I thought he played okay for Carolina last year. Not enough in any situation other than San Francisco for me to say, yeah, someone should sign him as a starter. But we've seen what's happened in San Francisco with the quarterbacks being able to be kind of plug and play there. Still believe in Sam Darnold's tools. He made some throws for Carolina last year that kind of sucked you back in. I'm just going to say I'm interested. Not ranking him as a top 32 quarterback, but not ready to quite write him off. And honestly, I thought about putting him in the high upside developing backup tier because he's kind of a unique spot there. But I'm not going to say Darnold has a super high upside anywhere other than San Francisco. Got Andy Dalton in there. How could you not? Played great for New Orleans last year. And then Desmond Ridder at 33. So not quite cracking the top 32 quarterbacks, in my opinion, for Atlanta's quarterback room. I think he's some people will be like, how is he not in the high upside developing backup tier with those other 3 quarterbacks that came out last year? And it comes down to the film and the evaluation. To me, Ridder showed exactly what you kind of expected coming out, where he's a high floor game manager, not the strongest arm, someone that isn't going to really pick you apart from the pocket other than like quick game. He's in the drop back passing game, very much going to, see if that first read, maybe the second read is open and then take off and run. That's fine, but like I said, he's not some meticulous pocket passer back there. I think he's okay. I think he can continue to play well and climb to being something like an Alex Smith throughout his career. Obviously, only 4 starts. Can't rank him much higher than this. But I think he'll do okay in Atlanta, but not expecting him to blow onto the scene and, get people to think he's a franchise quarterback or anything like that. Then you got Baker Mayfield. I question how much the shoulder injury has set him back. He's such a moxie and confidence-based passer. He needs to get that back as well. Some of the accuracy has fallen off for him. But, I still think the tools are there. He's got Geno Smith's quarterback coach coming in to be his offensive coordinator. He's getting to run a system that he thrived in. And I say thrived. He at one point looked like a fringe top 10 to 12 quarterback in Cleveland in Stefanski's offense that's going to look very similar to what they do in Tampa this year. He's got plenty of weapons. I'm interested as well to see what Baker can do if he can get back into that kind of, it reminds me a little bit like when Ryan Tannehill went to Tennessee. He was kind of getting written off, and then he became a decent starter again. And then we talked about Jacoby Brissett. But let's get into a little bit more of the fascinating conversations. Another split tier, and this one has a lot more cross-contamination. So I am going to go in order of where I ranked these guys, 19 through 31. But I will say some of these guys are in the high upside developing starter tier. And some of these guys are here because they're just complete adequate starters. So they couldn't be any different stylistically. but they are in the same range in terms of rankings. So at 31, I have Trey Lance. I do still believe in Trey Lance. Extreme circumstances have led to him not getting looked at in the same way that he probably could have been. You know, year one, rightfully so, was sitting behind Jimmy Garoppolo in the 1 year that Jimmy G stayed healthy. Year two was the starter. I don't think he showed enough to say that he was bad in those first couple games. That week one game against Chicago was a complete monsoon. It was a weird game to evaluate him on. And then he gets hurt week two, right? Might have been I think it was week two. So, I mean, you have that. And then Brock Purdy comes in and just takes the world by storm. So I still believe in the tools. I believe in the kid. He's only 22, 23 years old. So I'm not ready to say Trey Lance shouldn't be starting and growing as a developmental starter in the NFL. I got Will Levis in here as well. Do not think he should have fallen to the second round. I think there are teams that will regret not taking him. I love the landing spot. I love that DeAndre Hopkins went to Tennessee. I think people are really sleeping on Will Levis. I'm higher on him than a lot of people, and we'll see how that plays out, but I definitely have him in this group. You know, I had him right there in the same tier as Anthony Richardson and CJ Stroud in this draft. And again, we'll see how that plays out. You can let me know how stupid I am for that if you want, but that's where I got him. Then I got Anthony Richardson at 29. Not expecting a lot from him as a passer. There's just so far in year one, I should say. There's just so far for him to go. But he wasn't entirely raw. He was just like inexperienced, I guess is the best way to put it. Like, you do see him get through his progressions. He wants to throw from the pocket, but he just has so much to learn in terms of running a pro-style offense. So I do believe in Anthony Richardson. Love the pick for the Colts, ranking as the 29th quarterback coming into the year. And I'll just leave it at saying, like, he is already the most physically gifted quarterback that's ever played in the NFL. Again, you can tell me how stupid I am for that in the comments down below, but I believe it. The arm is insane. The size, the athleticism. Yeah, he's on the top of my list for quarterbacks I can't wait to watch play in the NFL. If you want more of my thoughts on Anthony Richardson, I do have a film breakdown up. My thoughts on him haven't really changed since I made that video in January, letting people know he was going to be a top 10 pick, which wasn't exactly popular at the time. But yeah, go check it out if you want more thoughts on Anthony Richardson from me. Then you have to jump up to the adequate starter tier for our 28th quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo. Man, I just wish he could stay healthy, man. But that's just not a part of his game. If he could stay healthy, he's probably higher up in this tier, closer to like Derek Carr. But he is going to fall down a little bit with those injury concerns. And, you know, I still think he can run this Raiders offense pretty well, but there's just not a lot of upside there either in his game. So 28th for him. Then we got Brock Purdy, who's overtook Jimmy G in San Francisco. You know, not to be annoying, but it was really fun for me to see Brock Purdy come in and look very similar to Jimmy Garoppolo with a little bit of extra playmaking on top of that, because I kind of nailed his college eval. I think my breakdown of him in my top 10 quarterbacks video last year before the draft couldn't have been more spot on for like a best case scenario of what he could be as a rookie. And we saw that. The point guard ability, the quick release, making the right reads within the structure of the offense. And then he does have instincts. He's got pocket presence. He can do some fun stuff on the move. Does he have the physical tools to ascend out of this tier? We'll see. You know, maybe he never needs to. Maybe Kyle Shanahan can live with Brock Purdy playing as the 25th best quarterback every year, as long as he's got great playmakers around him. I don't know. But I love Brock Purdy. Very interested to see a little bit more from him in terms of, like, is this real? Because it was a small sample size, kind of similar to Desmond Ridder a little bit. But then we got to drop back down to the developing high upside players with Jordan Love at 26. And obviously this is year 4 from him. You're expecting him to be relatively polished, and I certainly am optimistic. But, you know, we've seen one career start from him, and it was in a nightmare situation in Arrowhead on a short week notice because Rodgers got COVID. And the team around him did not play well that week. So that's the one start we have. He's come in relief a couple times, and when you string together his throws last year, he looked really good. But overall, I have always been a big believer in Jordan Love. Loved him coming out, and I think the time he's had to sit and develop paired with 3 years in this system, a good play caller in Matt LaFleur, a team that has a record of doing this with quarterbacks and having them hit, and some exciting young playmakers that can grow with Jordan Love. It's to the point where I would be surprised if he didn't finish the year as a top 20 quarterback at least. I think he can be a great quarterback in the NFL. He has all the tools, but there's inherited risk there. We just haven't seen enough from him, of course. And then I've got CJ Stroud at 25, and I struggled whether to put him in with this group with the high upside developing starters or actually with the adequate starters, because I do actually believe his floor is higher than anybody here in this group. I think he's, a better quarterback right now, entering the league than, say, Jimmy Garoppolo. I do believe that. I think his processing, his accuracy, his ability to play within the structure of that Texans offense, it's going to be pretty good. But the reason I put him down here is because I do think his upside is higher than the guys in that adequate starter group. But he's not up there with where we're going to see Bryce Young later. I've always felt like Bryce Young has a chance to be a top 5 quarterback because of the pocket presence, the playmaking instincts. That was where I felt like Stroud left a little bit more to be desired. But now that we've kind of, the draft analysis has been separated, Bryce Young has gone ahead of CJ Stroud as it always should have been. We don't have to really have those negative undertones with CJ Stroud. I'm really optimistic for what he's going to be now, and I think he's going to be a very good player into the future, even if I do have some slight questions about the upside with CJ Stroud. Then I do have Mac Jones at 24. Now, I do think things are going to be substantially better next year. I think the Patriots going from Matt Patricia as their offensive coordinator to Bill O'Brien is going to be one of the biggest improvements any team made offensively this year. So I do expect Mac Jones to at least get back to that rookie form and be a pretty solid quarterback. He does have physical limitations, and that's what has him finding himself in this tier, but I definitely expect a bounce back year from Mac. I do have Kenny Pickett just ahead of Mac Jones. I view these guys very neck and neck. I think Mac is a little bit better from the pocket, whereas Pickett is a little bit better on the move. So, pick your poison there. They're in this tier together for a reason. They're neck and neck for a reason. And Pickett was kind of exactly what I thought he would be when he came in as a first-round pick, as a solid starter, capable of getting through his progressions and running around making some stuff happen. He's a little bit scramble happy, but I thought he was pretty good in his rookie year, and I think with another year in Matt Canada's offense, even though it's a garbage offense, he's going to be very solid. Derek Carr at 21, it's going to sound low to a lot of people, but Derek Carr was really bad last year. There's no way around it. I don't know if the Saints are even guaranteed to get better quarterback play than they got from Andy Dalton last year. You can certainly hope for that, and that's why they went to get Derek Carr, who's done more over the last 3 years than Dalton. But I'm not the biggest Derek Carr guy. I don't think he's going to save the Saints season. I think he's a fine starter. But with the lack of confidence he showed last year, the lack of playmaking that he has, I don't know if there's a more timid passer from the pocket among starters in the NFL right now than Derek Carr. I think he's legitimately afraid of the rush at this point in time, and that's dangerous. That's what broke Carson Wentz. I think that broke Matt Ryan last year. I saw some of that with Derek Carr, so I do have him a little bit lower than he's ranked over the last couple of years. He used to be a little bit more up there with guys like Dak and Kirk Cousins. I don't view him that way anymore. I think he's dipped down a bit. Then at number 21, I have Justin Fields, and I'm sure Bears fans are going to come at me for this one. Look, the rushing is incredible, and there's no denying that Justin Fields can do things that maybe 2 or 3 other quarterbacks in the NFL are physically capable of doing. You can put together a Justin Fields highlight reel that looks better than almost every quarterback in the NFL. And I'd be an idiot if I sat here and said he's definitely going to finish the year as the 24th best quarterback, because what we've seen in years past from Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, some of these quarterbacks getting better in time, there's no doubt that with an improved surrounding cast, another year in this system, and another year of NFL development, that you can hope that Justin Fields will quickly climb out of here. But from what he has shown us to this point, it is all promise and potential. There's no way to deny that he was legitimately bad as a passer last year. easily a bottom 5 passing starter in the NFL, if not bottom 2 or 3. Not just the fact that he was dead last in yards per drop back. You know, even if you add the scrambling yards on top of his passing yards, he was still one of the least efficient quarterbacks in the NFL last year. And even though those scrambles look incredible, there's no difference if he runs for 60 yards than if he hangs in the pocket, trusts his receiver to win deep, and completes a pass for 60 yards, you know? So for him, it's amazing that he can do some of these things. But 36th in time to throw, 34th out of 36th in turnover-worthy play percentage, getting sacked way too much, overall just inefficient. These things have to catch up to how great he is as a runner before we can feel comfortable at all ranking him any higher than this right here, at the top of the high upside developing starters in the NFL. Then I've got Daniel Jones next. Really good season from DJ last year. He gets a bad rap. So often quarterbacks, if they aren't great right away, a lot of people like to just write them off. I have seen legitimate development from Daniel Jones. I love how Brian Daboll has allowed him to just, play within the structure of the offense, give him reads and play calls that make things easier on him, and then allow him to use his feet where he is. I did see a tweet recently where someone was arguing that he's the best scrambling quarterback in the NFL. That's just effing stupid, but he is top 10 at least. Like, he is really athletic. He murdered the Vikings in a playoff game because they couldn't have answers for his scrambling ability. So I do think he's a very capable player. I don't know how much better he's going to get, but for now, the Giants have an adequate starter. And then Ryan Tannehill. Don't forget about Ryan Tannehill. This guy is still a top 20 quarterback in the NFL. It's so easy to look at his production late last season or even last season in general and dismiss him. But look, the reality is the offensive line was in shambles. They traded away A.J. Brown and gave him nothing to work with. Things should be much better this year. I think Tannehill has shown when the structure is in place, he's much closer to Dak Prescott and Kirk Cousins than he is where I've seen him ranked around a couple times this offseason as like the 28th quarterback. That's just ridiculous. But that does wrap up that large tier of QBs 19 through 31. And now we have in his own tier, Bryce Young in the good now, but going to be great tier. I really do believe Bryce Young will be a better quarterback right now than everybody we've talked about so far. But I think as early as the end of this season, he could be a top 10 quarterback. I am that high on I almost said Jalen Hurts. The Alabama connections are getting to me, but I really am that high on what Bryce Young can be. It's, for one, I think he does read defenses. He is accurate. He does have the arm talent. He does attack the middle of the field. Don't let the size fool you. There's so many people that question his size and if he can be durable enough. I always say it's much more about how you protect yourself than how small you are. The quarterbacks that have dealt with the biggest career-altering injuries in the last 5+ years were Cam Newton and Andrew Luck, who felt like they were invincible because they're big. Well, Bryce Young, he knows he's small. He does slide. He avoids contact. So even if when he gets hit, he's more likely to get hurt, he's getting hit way less because of his pocket mobility and because he's smart about it than a lot of other quarterbacks in the league. So I'm not as worried about it. Beyond that, the playmaking is just insane. The game moves in slow motion for him. Really excited to see Bryce Young. I just ranked the Panthers as the number 1 team in the NFC South. And the biggest reason for that is my optimism for Bryce Young, coming in ranking 18th. And then this next tier is probably going to rattle some people. This to me is the 5 quarterbacks in the NFL that are really good players. You can't deny that you can win a lot of games with these quarterbacks. If everything is perfect and you get a little bit lucky in the playoffs, you might win a Super Bowl. But really what it comes down to is the second you got to start paying these guys, can things be perfect around them? And can you win a Super Bowl with these players to the point where ultimately do you have to beg the question, should we move on from this player? And the quarterbacks in this tier, in order, starting at 17 up to 13, Tua Tagovailoa, Geno Smith, Jared Goff, Kirk Cousins, and yes, Dak Prescott, who I continue to not understand why he's so consistently viewed as a second-tier superstar quarterback. All these guys have similarities about them. Every quarterback, of course, is different, but I suppose everybody deserves a little bit more time. So let's go back to Tua at 17. And I think I'd probably put Tua over Geno and Goff if you could guarantee me health, similar to Jimmy Garoppolo getting dinged a little bit for that. I was encouraged by a lot of the stuff we saw from Tua last year. I still think he likes to predetermine his reads. He puts a lot of trust in that offense, and for good reason. He's got a great play caller and amazing receivers that are like impossible to cover. But you do see him firing the ball into double coverage and getting flustered when stuff isn't there. He's not a remarkable athlete to extend plays when stuff isn't there, but the accuracy and the ability, like I said, to be a really good quarterback when he has the right structure around him, he proved he has that. I also do think he established one high-end trait, and that was his efficiency in the red zone, where he really does show good pocket presence. He will buy time and find those tight, difficult windows down in the red zone. So to me, that's the one plus trait that Tua has really shown. But just got to stay healthy, man. If he can stay healthy, he can definitely be higher than 17 by season's end. Geno was just 1 year, but his arm talent really came through last year, very similar to Jared Goff. You know, neither of these guys are the best at extending plays, especially in Jared Goff's case. Neither of these guys are perfect at reading defenses, but they're good enough. And man, both Geno and Goff throw some of the most beautiful touch passes and, hard thrown tight window passes into the second level, into the deep levels of the defense than anybody in the league. And as they both showed last year, you give them the right guys around them, they can play close to a top 10 level. Kirk Cousins, very similar to what we just said there, probably doesn't get enough respect, but he is going to come in 14th. And then Dak is going to still top off this tier, but he doesn't get enough criticism, in my opinion, for forcing stuff when what he expects to be there isn't there. And he doesn't get criticized enough for basically not having that pocket presence, the know-how of when and how to use his feet to extend plays. 3rd and 8, it feels like more often than not, Dak is going to put the ball up in the hands of his receivers, throw a 50-50 ball, and hope that moves the chains. That's fine. You're going to convert some third downs with that, but that's what separates Dak to me from like Joe Burrow. Is Joe Burrow is always looking for that high percentage conversion chance on those difficult plays. He knows that, I can throw it up to T. Higgins. That's an option. But I can also elude this rusher and get out of the pocket and make plays and find an open throwing window. That's what, the biggest thing with Dak is missing for me that really separates him from the rest of these quarterbacks ahead of him. So I do have Dak in a tier of quarterbacks that I would consider moving on from. And I know I'm lower on Dak than consensus, but to me, when I watch Dak play, he doesn't put a fear factor in opposing defenses, and I don't see a superstar quarterback. I see something much closer to Kirk Cousins than I do the way I feel when I watch, even guys like Lamar, Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert. Now, these next 3 are complete wild cards. And if you wanted to put, I'll be honest, if you wanted to put Dak or Kirk Cousins especially ahead of these next 3, I can't really argue you that much. It's just a matter of how quick are you to change your opinion on guys and how much faith do you have in that guys can get back. Because this next tier is, to me, prove to me that 2022 was an outlier. There were 3 quarterbacks last year that I viewed as easy top 10 quarterbacks that can elevate their offense, do a lot of that play extension stuff, provide something to the team beyond what is there within the structure of the offense. And those are Russell Wilson, Matthew Stafford, and Deshaun Watson, who all had tough years last year. Russell Wilson played like a bottom 5 quarterback in Denver in a really difficult situation with bad play calling, bad offensive line. Matthew Stafford showed that his kind of whether it's the shoulder or the back, the durability is just a massive question. I also think when he played, he wasn't quite as good. But I do think a healthy Matthew Stafford is a top 10 quarterback. But just as we had with Tua, just as we had with Jimmy Garoppolo, how much can you count on that health? I think it's extremely difficult to know that. And then Deshaun Watson, who was absolute cheeks after being a sexual predator towards 26 women not playing for 2 years. You go back to the last time he played football before this year, he was a top 5 quarterback. Last year, he was substantially worse than Jacoby Brissett. So what do these guys give you this year? It is the ultimate question. I am just by nature slower to move off of guys. I think these guys have all shown some really incredible football, and I know it's in there with the right help around them. But if you wanted to move this entire tier, honestly, down below 13 through 17, I think that's fair. So this is where I decided to put them. It's very controversial. I understand that. So if you want to roast me for it, go for it. But that's my explanation. Then we do get up into what I would just describe in general as tier 2. You know, let's just reveal the whole thing because it'll make it easier to describe this thing. You know, I see there's the tier 1 of elite quarterbacks, but Mahomes is like in a tier within that tier. Mahomes is alone. No one else is close to where Mahomes is at. But to me, these are guys that are like on a given week, maybe 5 to 10 times a week, you're getting an elite quarterback. But the consistency just isn't quite there, or the complete skill set isn't there to project that they will give you a full season of elite quarterback play. That's what separates these guys in this superstar tier, to me, from the elite quarterbacks. So this is going to be another controversial rating here at 9, where I have Jalen Hurts. I'm so overly impressed by Jalen Hurts. I've said that I'm done doubting him. And I think by putting him in this tier with some really incredible quarterbacks, I think, in my eyes at least, that is giving him his respect. But I firmly believe that he had the lowest difficulty job of any quarterback in the NFL last year. And he had the best offensive line. He had arguably the best play calling behind San Francisco, maybe Kansas City, but some of the best play calling that was perfect for his skill set, which is part of the picture here, of course. But the playmakers too. Like, how many times on a difficult third down, did he just launch it up to Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown and they came down with it? That makes Jalen Hurts look a lot better and is a luxury that guys like Lamar and Kyler Murray, even Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert above him haven't had. So to me, it's more like I need to continue seeing him play at that level. He played at a top 5 quarterback level last year. I won't deny that. But how much did the surrounding cast help him get to that level? And how much can you expect him to play at that level if Lane Johnson goes down, if A.J. Brown isn't available any given week? The Eagles, like it or not, Eagles fan, had a remarkable run of health last year. And that's just my opinion on it. I feel like this is still showing a ton of respect for Jalen Hurts, who showed improvements in his time to throw. His accuracy's improved since the Oklahoma days. I feel like he's still has some pocket presence questions. I think he does bail from clean pockets quite often still. And I think that's in a world where the structure around him with the receivers and the O-line, if those things got worse, I think him bailing from clean pockets would show up as an issue more often. So if you're looking for a criticism, I suppose it's that. But overall, top 9 for Jalen Hurts. Eagles fans won't like it, but I think a lot of people share this sentiment, and that's where I'm at with him. And then I have Lamar at 8. You know, it feels like it's been so long since Lamar was playing at that MVP level. I still think the highs from Lamar are better than what we've seen from Jalen Hurts, and I think now with receivers, with a different offense, with better offensive line in front of him, like if I could take Lamar and put him on the Eagles, I would expect him to be better than Jalen Hurts. Not substantially. I think even Jalen Hurts has a little bit better accuracy than Lamar. But I think Lamar is a little bit more comfortable passing from the pocket and hanging in, making difficult reads than Jalen Hurts is. So they're neck and neck. I think where I'm going to get a ton of criticism for this, I think this is going to be the hottest take on this list, is Kyler Murray at 7. I'm not worried about the injury. I think he'll be back full go. It's not like he has some history of injuries. It was a freaky non-contact injury. I think if you're looking at Lamar and Hurts, I think Kyler Murray is the best pocket passer out of the three of them. I think he has the best accuracy down the field. I think he reads defenses better than Jalen, worse than Lamar. But I think he has by far the best pocket presence and that know-how of when to use his feet to extend plays and when to stay in a clean pocket. So as a passer, I like him better. And as a runner, he's probably a little bit more than Jalen, a little bit less than Lamar. He's had a tough team around him. Another situation where you put Kyler on the Philadelphia Eagles, I think they're a better football team than they are with Jalen Hurts. I'm sorry, Eagles fans. You can hate me for it, but you go back a year ago, mid-season 2022, and Kyler Murray was the front runner for MVP for an undefeated Cardinals team. DeAndre Hopkins gets hurt, then later suspended. The team, the defense, everything just started to crumble around him, and it's to the point where Kyler is, in my opinion, now the most underrated quarterback in the NFL. Maybe the most underrated player in the NFL because of the Call of Duty jokes, the what have you done for me lately league, how bad the Cardinals have been. I'm a Kyler Murray stan, like it or love it, and I know this ranking won't be popular, but it is my belief, and I hope my explanation on that explained it. But I do have Trevor Lawrence at 6. The way he came on last year started to look like that true golden boy, that generational prospect. I love the way he's began to really dissect defenses. He can really attack the middle of the field and see throwing windows that most quarterbacks just don't anticipate. And he's got the arm talent to make some insane throws. Honestly, the way he can move in the pocket and how athletic he is at his height, his upside is insane. And I can't wait to see him this year with a real number one wide receiver in Calvin Ridley, another year in Doug Peterson's offense. I really believe Trevor Lawrence can become an elite quarterback this year. And then I got Herbert at 5. And I don't have Herbert as an elite quarterback yet. He's obviously shown so much high-end play, despite having bad play calling, despite his receivers always getting hurt around him. The thing is, I just don't think we've seen a full season of elite quarterback play from Herbert yet. And very easily could happen this year with the new offensive coordinator, with better playmakers around him. I think it's a lack of playoff success when you get into this range of quarterbacks does matter, because in the playoffs, that's when defenses are really dialing in on what you do well. They're usually better defenses, forcing you to play left-handed. I don't know if we've seen that Herbert can do that consistently yet. I think he could this season, but I will say, just like when I watch Justin Herbert, there is a little bit left to be desired when it comes to that it factor. And I know people hate to hear that because it's something so difficult to put your finger on what you truly mean by what is it factor. For me, it comes back to a lot of the stuff we said about Dak Prescott. Do you know when and how to use your feet to extend plays? Do you have that natural feel in the pocket to navigate the play? And I think like 2 out of 3 times he does. But there's a lot of plays where I just feel like, oh, there was a step up lane there. Oh, you took that check down a little bit too early. I'd rather see you use your feet or hang in the pocket and find an opportunity to convert the chains. That to me is where there's a little bit of a lack of an it factor. And I think a little bit of like the winning, QB wins is such a stupid stat, but I think there have been times where Justin Herbert has left a little bit of the meat on the bones of some really big plays. It's very minimal. He's still a top 5 quarterback, but those are just some of the reasons why I don't have Herbert in the elite tier. And I think a lot of people are going to be like, oh, well, how come Dak isn't in this tier too? Well, Dak can't make the throws and make the spectacular plays and bring the exceptionally high level insanity that all 5 of these quarterbacks are physically capable of providing on an individual play basis. But then we get into my elite quarterbacks, call it tier 1A, tier 1B in a real sense here, where I do have Mahomes at the top in his own little subgroup here, and then 3 quarterbacks that I still consider as elite quarterbacks. And I might get criticism for this, but I still think Aaron Rodgers is an elite quarterback. I don't think people talk enough about just how big of a disaster last season was for the back-to-back MVP. You have an offensive line that for the first 9 weeks of the season was horrible, with Bakhtiari not healthy, Elton Jenkins not healthy, questionable personnel decisions. Zach Tom hadn't been put into the mix yet. You also had, I think, the worst receiving core in the NFL last year. You have Christian Watson getting hurt and not playing well for the first 10 weeks of the season. Romeo Doubs was incredibly inconsistent. He showed some fun flashes, but was hardly ever available for that team. Allen Lazard was their best option. Their tight ends were really bad. You throw on top of that he had to play through a broken thumb that led to accuracy issues. I don't think it's crazy to say for the back-to-back MVP that I think everybody agrees didn't show a drop-off in arm talent, but he did show a drop-off in accuracy. He had a broken thumb on his throwing hand. I think that probably had something to do with it. But I think with the Jets, he's rejuvenated. He's going to have a much better team around him. And I still think he's capable of elite quarterback play. We're talking about a guy that has won 2 of the last 3 MVP trophies. And again, I don't think has shown physical regression. So I'm going to stand by Aaron Rodgers as the 4th best quarterback in the NFL. And I'm very curious to see what people think about that. I know I'm not alone. There's other people that still have him up here and are confident that he can play at this level. But then I got Josh Allen. These top 4 were kind of the easiest to rank for me because Josh Allen is not as good as Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow is not as good as Patrick Mahomes. And with Josh Allen, the things he can do physically at a relatively consistent basis are absurd. When Josh Allen is at his best, he might be the best quarterback in the NFL any given week, even more than Patrick Mahomes. I even tweeted after the Bills beat the Chiefs that I'm ready to give Josh Allen the crown because he had gone on this 8-week stretch from how he ended the playoffs last year to how he started last season. That might be the most dominant 8-week stretch of quarterback play we've ever seen. But unfortunately for me, the second I tweeted that, he went back to high amount of turnover when he plays. And really that's what it comes down to is he as trustworthy on those have-to-have-it third downs as Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes? I don't think he is. I'd still take him over everybody else, and that's why he's in the elite tier, but that's why he comes in at number 3. And then Joe Burrow, he's probably the most consistent he might be the most consistent quarterback in the entire NFL right now. The ability to pick defenses apart, the ability to extend plays on third down, the clutch when the game's on the line. Big game Joe. It really shows up. It's crazy how much my pre-draft take on Joe Burrow, where I said he's Aaron Rodgers from the waist down with the pocket presence and the play extension, and he's Tom Brady from the waist up as far as the clutch, the leadership, the mental ability to pick defenses apart. That's who Joe Burrow is. He's a healthy combination of Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady at their prime. That's an elite quarterback. And if it wasn't for the best quarterback in the history of the NFL being here at the top in Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow would be the best in the NFL right now. So I feel like I don't really need to talk about Patrick Mahomes. I can kill some time and play some highlights because he's just so effing insane. Defending MVP, won 2 of the last 3 Super Bowls. He's that dude. He's, as I said, I believe the best quarterback that has ever played football. And what's crazy is he's only kind of just getting started. So the eye test, the stats, the efficiency, at this point, the wins, I know Tom Brady stands are going to come in here and yell at me, but he's just a better quarterback than Tom Brady ever was. He just is. I'm sorry. It's Pat. This dude's insane. He's God. He's God tier, whatever you want to call it. That's going to do it for the tier maker video here today. Really hope you guys enjoyed. Definitely know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down below. Sure to be some disagreement. I think some of the hot takes are going to be Russ, Kyler, Justin Fields. I imagine that's going to be where a lot of, maybe Jalen Hurts. That's where a lot of the dialogue is going to lie. But this is where I'm at. I've been watching a lot of film this offseason, so feeling pretty good about this list. It's going to look a lot different in 10 weeks when these guys start playing games. But coming into the year, that's where I got them. Hope you enjoyed. we'll be back with our next deep dive here within the next 48 hours or so. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that. And peace out. We'll see you later.